Welcome to the RevUp Dental podcast. On this show, we interview successful dentists, consultants, and industry professionals on how to successfully start, grow, and sell your dental practice. In this episode, we talk to Dr. Carlo Biasucci, who in a matter of 3 years grew his practice to over $7 million in production. Over the previous decade, Carlo had achieved success by most conventional metrics. His practice had 7 operatories, a team of 12, and was doing around $2.5 million a year. However, he was constantly stressed and burning the candle on both ends, always feeling like he was on the brink of burnout. Then the unthinkable happened. During a vacation in the Grand Cayman with his wife, Carlo suffered a scuba diving accident, which left him unable to practice dentistry. Like many dentists and entrepreneurs, we rarely consider our own mortality. We focus on the grind and the hustle without a backup plan if anything goes wrong and we're no longer able to work. Carlo's recovery was long and difficult, taking almost a year to get back into clinical work. But he kept busy by reading and studying successful business leaders on how they were able to build a business that ran without them. He looked at large successful companies like Ritz-Carlton and thought to himself, these guys manage thousands of employees, but everything always seems to run like clockwork, and they deliver amazing customer service. Yet I'm pulling my hair out and constantly putting out fires, just managing a dozen people. He thought, there's gotta be a better way. During his recovery, he consumed many books on business operations, systems, processes, especially reading a lot of books by Dan Kennedy. He slowly started putting what he learned into practice, changing his leadership style, the culture of the practice, introducing better systems and processes to empower his employees rather than micromanage them. After 3 years, he was able to triple the size of his practice and eliminate the stresses and the headaches that he had been dealing with previously. He eventually decided to sell the practice and open the Elite Practice, a consulting firm helping other dentists dramatically increase their income, slash their working hours, and eliminate stress. I hope you enjoy the interview. So Carlo, thanks for taking the time to join us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me again, Nick. Great to be back.
So you've got a bit of a scary mishap, something that I'd love for you to share, something that I think more dentists really need to think about and consider. And it really changed how you think about, running a practice, running a business, made you rethink your whole career in a sense. Can you tell us what happened exactly?
Yeah, sure. It's even, you bring up a good point, but I think it's even beyond dentistry or even business, but just in life in general. I mean, we tend to think, especially as entrepreneurs, as driven people, that we're going to live forever and that we can, just keep going at the same pace and that's going to be fine. Then we get this check every now and then on our mortality, and that's it. Like I say, I tell people it was both the worst and the best thing that could ever have happened to me. So, quick version of it is that we were taking vacations, my wife and I, about every quarter or so, just to kind of get out of the usual run of the mill kind of life. We were working pretty hard. I was pushing hard in the practice. We were conventionally successful. So it was a good practice, 7 chairs, 2.5 million, blah, blah, blah. Your typical dental practice, doing well. We took this vacation doing something we did frequently, which was scuba diving, which I love to do. And this particular time I was just, having a rough patch. I was kind of at the end of my rope. I won't say quite burned out, but getting there. I definitely needed the break. And so we took off to Grand Cayman, where we typically would go for a week at a time and just spend most of the week diving. This time we went first dive of the week. And when we came back up from that dive, everything was legit according to my dive computer. I did nothing really, out of the ordinary. But I didn't feel right. Tried the second dive of the day, didn't go so well. The end of that day, my wife tells me, I don't really remember it. She said I stared at the wall for about 3 hours, and
Wow.
I was like kind of there, but I wasn't really like focused. Went to bed, woke up in the middle of the night, couldn't feel half of my body. The right side was completely numb. And so went to the hospital. Long story, was a decompression injury, but a very different decompression injury than you typically hear. It wasn't the bends per se. It was this neurological manifestation that was like basically a severe concussion, but the physicians that I was talking to, there were 4 or 5 involved, all specialists in this area. And they said, like, it's just a microscopic difference between you being able to ever walk again or be dead or any of the above options, but you're still breathing and you're still functional. And after 9 hours in a hyperbaric chamber, I regained feeling, and it was, I would say, about 70% resolved. But I was still having this major inflammation of the brain and this kind of thing. So it took me, I would say, probably 3 months before I was normal-ish. But certainly the rest of the year for me to get back on, like, back up to plane, let's say. And it was an interesting experience, because at that point I thought, well, I can just go forever. I can have my, double espresso twice a day, and I can just keep pushing. And, a lot of the problems as early entry level, I'll say, even entrepreneurs, naive entrepreneurs, we think we can take the whole business, throw it on our shoulders and run it to the finish line. Yeah. And we like to do that because we can do that. You can do that. It's one option. It just sucks. And there's a way better way, because you can't scale. And if you see what's beyond that, then, wow, look, I can do all of this. I can actually create a self-managing practice, and even above that, a self-multiplying business where I don't even need to be there. So that's kind of the quick backstory.
So once that accident happened, you said it took 3 months to kind of like get back to somewhat normal. 3 months to be able to practice again, or how long were you out of commission where, you just didn't feel comfortable seeing patients? Because the scary part is, you don't know how long the recovery is going to be. And, it's like, how long can you keep going without making an income, right? As a dentist, if you're not, in the operatory every day, working in the patient's mouth, I mean, the business doesn't really make any money. So what happened? How long until you were back in the office? How did that impact your practice?
Yeah, it's a good question. So this is something I hadn't really considered up to this point. I mean, I was insured. I had life insurance. I had disability insurance. I had blah, 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 all the stuff that professionals should have. And if you're listening to this and don't have that, you need to have that. But for me, it was, we got back, even the plane ride was awful because the inflammation of the brain, I couldn't handle the altitude, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want them to, like, land the plane. So I was just fetal position for 3 hours coming back. And I was like, as soon as we landed, I went straight to Toronto General, and I'm like, okay, here's where I am. They put me back in the hyperbaric chamber because I was like, borderline passing out, and I couldn't even walk. It was crazy. I remember standing in Pearson at the luggage claim, and I was like, something's wrong. The floor is moving. And my wife's looking at me and she's like, it's a concrete building. It's not going anywhere. It's you. So anyway, get back to our home. I'm looking at, okay, well, I've got like a full week next week. I just don't see it. It was one emergency I kind of wanted to see. I went in, I tried to do something. I helped that person, but I'm like, okay, this is it. Like, I'm out. I can't, like, I need to take a break here. So we just basically blew everything up. And you have no backup plan for that because you weren't expecting it. There's no redundancy built into the system. And as dentists, you are the chief everything person. So in most companies, you have your C-suite, right? You have your COO, your operations person, you have your marketing person, you have your HR person, you have your finance person. And then you have your CEO that kind of manages the group, the quarterbacks, the whole thing. Yeah. And then you have your frontline workers. Whereas in dentistry, we're trying to be the frontline worker and everything else. And if you get taken out, well, now you're not producing, you're not managing, you're not doing anything. And so I thought, well, okay, I can't go very long like this because this is going to be really bad. Now, at this time, fortunately, I did have an associate in the practice. So it helped to mitigate, and we had a strong hygiene base. So that helped to mitigate, but it wasn't certainly turning a profit. It was enough to keep the lights on and not, run us into the ground in a hurry. But how long could I be gone? And so my family physician, who I finally ended up seeing, said, well, you might have to choose a different career, or you might not be able to practice again, and so forth. And there's a whole long story.
To hear that.
It's like, I refused to hear it. I'm like, okay, that's not an option for me because I've got way too much invested in this. We had we had built this brand new practice, and we were like, so for me, I wasn't accepting that. But And there's a long story I can take you into, which we won't on this podcast, of course, but what I did health-wise to recover from that completely, and then even better health and mental status than I was previously. Another story altogether, but it did, like I said, take me a good year to get right back into it again.
Yeah, and the nice thing is there is a happily ever after. You managed to get things back on track, grow the practice to probably larger than 99% of dental offices out there. I believe you reached over $7 million of production, right? So a huge success, and also in a town that most people would think, this isn't like Toronto is not a major city. Still, you achieved like great results. So ultimately, what happened? How did you get things back on track? What did you do during that downtime to stay positive? I can imagine it could be very depressing to have to rethink your career choice after years, like decades of investing into this career. So tell us, how did you get back on that path of recovery?
Yeah, I mean, I was determined. So I wanted to be a dentist since I was 11 years old. And I never really strayed from that. And then I did it. And I was like, okay, I'm not giving this up. I'm just not doing it. Mm-hmm. So while I was off, I spent a lot of time looking into, okay, there's got to be more, because if I can go to the Ritz-Carlton at any other high-end establishment and they have thousands of employees, as a company, they have thousands and thousands of employees and restaurant chains and so forth. How can they manage it where I've got a dozen people and it stresses me out? What am I doing wrong? There's got to be something. So I started searching. Right. I found a couple of things. One was Dan Kennedy, and I binged on everything, literally everything that he's ever created, and he's created a lot. I eventually became a private client, and on from there. During that year, so much the knowledge transfer occurred. Like I spent time in book after book after book and studying people, studying systems, studying how does a business actually supposed to run versus what we're doing, which is just kind of winging it, right? And so what we did was, after that year, this was 2013, starting 2014, we just went head on and implemented piece after piece after piece, like Vern Harnish's scaling up process. And I could probably name 100 books that I would recommend, and all of them are equally relevant. But taking that process, we tripled the practice in 3 years. So from 2.5 million, we literally tripled it. We went from 7 chairs to 17 chairs. And from me and an associate to me and 3 other GP associates, plus all the specialties represented and a full-time ortho and so forth. Sorry, not a full-time ortho, but an ortho that was coming in 3 days a month, who was basically full. So this person came in and they saw, 90 patients. Every time they came in, they were starting more cases than I'd ever imagined we'd start. We were getting 175 new patients a month on average for 5 straight years. I remember when our marketing team brought me the cake with 200 candles on it to celebrate the 200th, a month where we cracked 200, and it wasn't the only month. So this is a community, as you mentioned, 75,000 people, about 60 other dentists. It wasn't like a, wide open, kind of hang your shingle and they'll come. It was competitive, but we did so many things that we learned from other businesses that they're out there. They're just, we don't hear these things in dentistry, or maybe they're maybe slightly more common today. You might see people doing these things, but also we've been teaching this for 10 years too. So it's gotten into the market, but these things, that other companies do, are directly applicable to dentistry. You might read a book and you might say, yeah, this sounds good, but I'm not, a Bay Street company. I'm not a Wall Street company. I'm not a Fortune 500 company. Yeah, but you still have a culture. You still have a business. You still have a team.
The same fundamental building blocks still apply to any kind of, even if it's a practice or anything. Yeah. What I find generally is that it's not always the dentist that kind of is the roadblock, though. Sometimes, there's a lot of great advice you can get in books and coaching and whatnot. And there's a lot of things that sound great. And, the dentist gets super excited, wants to implement, wants to change things. I mean, nobody wants to run a business that makes you want to pull your hair out every day, right? But sometimes, when you're trying to, implement this, things you're learning, sometimes there's a lot of resistance from the team too. I've seen practices where, they've got somebody that's been there for 20 years, believes, everything they're doing is perfect. Nothing can be changed. Did you find that, when you came back to the practice with, fresh perspective, fresh ideas, did people adopt those changes, or did you run into resistance?
That's a good question. So there were two issues. One was my own lack of growth in leadership. The second was the team's, I would say the team's resistance to change, but also my inability to lead them through change. So two things have to happen if you want to grow a business, any business, practice, small practice, huge practice, doesn't matter, even major corporation. The leaders have to grow as leaders, but the leaders also have to grow the people. If everyone on the team grows, then the team will grow. It's that simple, rising tide, right? It raises all ships. So if we don't take everyone through that process and grow them together, we're not going to grow, which means the focus has to be, I as the owner have to grow as a leader, but I also have to really focus on culture. I have to understand how to not lead by telling people what to do, but by getting them to be inspired and to want to do it. And you might think, well, this is hard to do in dentistry. People don't care anymore. They just, no, like I've had this conversation a few times lately. Everybody says the same thing about the generation that follows them. They're lazy. They don't know how to work. They don't care, blah, blah, blah. Hey, you know what? I said that too, and it's not true, because here's why. Every generation, still the world goes forward, and still the world is better year after year than it was. I mean, you could argue absolutely some things, but
maybe not with the environment, but for most things, education, healthcare.
We've been advancing, right? We've been advancing. So I can tell you that we in our company, and I know you and your company as well, you employ 20 somethings, 30 somethings, and they're moving the company 60 forward now. Right?
Yeah.
Right. I get half of our team is now under the age that I would say are hard workers, or I would have said are hard workers. That's not true anymore. They're very good workers. You just have to learn how to engage them. And so it's really your skill as a leader directly determines the culture, which directly determines what you get as an output.
Are you struggling to grow your dental practice? Do you look at your schedule and see that it's constantly filled with holes? Are you tired of investing months and thousands of dollars on marketing and consultants only to see little to no return? Discover a smarter way to grow your practice with RevUp Dental's AI-powered software. At RevUp Dental, we analyze hundreds of dental practices across North America and hundreds of thousands of new patient calls and interactions in order to help dentists better understand what's really holding their practice back from growth and what they can do about it. From reviewing how your staff handle new patient calls and coaching them on how to secure more appointments, all the way to analyzing your practice's reputation online and helping you become the top choice for patients in your area. With RevUp Dental, you'll receive a clear roadmap and support for how to take your practice to the next level. Think of it like Google Maps or Waze. You plug in where you want to go, we find the fastest and most efficient route, and we give you step-by-step guidance and support on how to get there. See what other dentists are saying and book a demo at RevUpDental.com. Now, did you find everyone was inspired? I find that, sometimes, like most people definitely want to succeed. Nobody wakes up wanting to work in a job that they feel just isn't really going anywhere. They're questioning, like, what am I doing with my life? People generally do latch on to that positive, energy that a good leader can bring, where like, let's make changes, let's improve things. But what happens when you run into somebody who, let's say maybe they're a bit older, they're, not far off from retiring, they just maybe don't have that sort of passion. Do you feel you can inspire that change in everybody, or do you feel, is there like times when you maybe have to cut your losses? Like, for example, did all of the same people on your team stay with you during this 3-year growth spurt?
There's maybe two answers to that question. It's a good question. The first is that you will have inevitably, when the culture shifts, people sort themselves. Like everyone, 80%, let's say, is going in this direction. They're engaged, they're excited. And the person who just doesn't want that is going to say, yeah, you know what? It's time for me to move on.
I see.
They'll self-select. And if your culture is strong enough, when you hire people and they come in and they go through your onboarding process, which is part 2 of my answer here, I think, that they're going to be like, this isn't for me. or, hey, this is awesome, I'm super excited. And as I was just saying, the onboarding process is also super important, because if you take people through a process when they come into your business that this is what we're about, you're going to keep attracting the right people, and you're going to repel the people that don't fit. Now, will you hit a person that's like they don't fit and they're not leaving? You need to do something about that. What am I going to do? Well, occasionally you might have an issue where you need to turn over team members, but usually they self-select if the culture is strong enough. Now, if your whole team is resistant and you're trying to go in a direction, then we have a problem. And usually that problem starts with, okay, I can either completely clean house, which is super undesirable and expensive from a turnover perspective, because now you're taking away and you're throwing out everything that you've got for systems so far, even though they might not be the best systems, they're still how you're running today.
Right.
And do I want to start with a clean slate? That's often painful, which is why people don't do it. But can I grow them slowly over time? The answer is generally yes. And there's a process to take them through that, but you have to manage it. You can't just say, hey, guess what? We're just going to blow everything up, because people who don't like change are going to buck that.
Right.
I will tell you a quick story about our practice. When I didn't have leadership right, and I thought we could just double and hire 19 people, 20 people in 6 months, I figured, hey, you know what? Just hire them. Let's hire them, give them roles, and let's go. All of them quit within 6 months. So we had a huge,
Wow.
kind of catastrophic mess to deal with. And then we look back and I'm like, you know what? That's my fault, because we didn't actually have the support that they needed. They wanted to do a good job. We didn't have an onboarding process that was intentional. And so we built that. And this is something that our clients get now, because if we hire for one of our clients, and we hire many people, we hired 200 people just from outside of dentistry last year alone for our clients, and brought them into dental practices. These people go through a clear onboarding process. So when they get to whatever their role is, front desk or clinical or whatever, they at least have a clue of what they're doing, and they know what the expectations are, and they feel like they've got a support line, right? If you don't provide people that, and you just say, hey, guess what? You're now assigned as this job in my office. This is what you do. Go do it.
Here's the desk, here's the chair, here's the phone. Figure it out,
Yeah.
And then they wonder, it's like, it's just so hard to find good people. It's like, but what are you doing to, like create those good people, right? Because everyone, and like anyone you hire with a great attitude, and you mentioned something interesting. I think, looking at, the hundreds of clients we monitor, thousands of receptionists, we, track how they interact with patients. Some of the best ones have little to no experience in dentistry. They just work in a practice that did a great job to teach them, what they need to know. And a lot of dentists think that, I don't have time for that. It's going to take forever. I just need somebody with experience. But it could take, just a few weeks to get somebody like really up to speed. And sometimes those people, in just a few weeks of training with no previous dental experience, will outperform receptionists who've been there for 20 years.
Yeah, it's not sometimes, it's all the time, because I can tell you, if you take the time in your hiring process and you look for the best candidate for the job, and you just forget about dental background, especially in a position like admin or backup assisting or something like that, like a stereo person or a floater, whatever you might call that person. We have a different way that we use a person like that in the practice, but regardless, entry positions, if you were to take the best people you can find, and there's some assessments that are very reliable to sort the stack, let's say, of resumes that you get, and you bring those people in and you bring them through a clear process, which we do with our clients, you will see those people flying out of the gate versus this person I brought on because they already know how to use Dentrix. That's great, but they already know all the bad habits and all the things that we now have to undo, or they are already going to come with all of the ex-boyfriend stories, which is like, in my old office, I did this. And that's not relevant here because we're not the old office. And so you always have this pull, right? So if you could find the best people, the attitudes, and then you just train the skills, not that difficult.
So if you're not looking for the dental experience, which patient management system do you know how to use? What do you look for? I mean, what changed in terms of how you looked at hiring people, when you were going through this process of sort of like rebuilding everything from scratch? Do you look at personality? How do you test for that? Do you see if they're fun and bubbly? Sort of like what changed? What do you look for now?
Yeah, I'll take it maybe from two perspectives. One, a team member and the other an associate dentist. So if I'm hiring a team member and I get 10 resumes for admin, or 5 resumes for assisting, or 1 resume for hygiene in this market. Okay, this be realistic because that's what you're going to get. If I have 10 admin people, I'm going to sort them quickly by using an assessment that I like, which is the 1 score. It's expensive, but I like it. Our team does it no cost for our clients. We handle literally every resume that comes through clients' portals. We deal with that. Our team does it as part of the program. But if you want to spend the money, it measures cognitive ability, personality, motivation. It kind of gives you a snapshot of this person's fit for the role that you're trying to bring them into. The
So
top
is it like an
2,
online quiz? They are sent a link and then they go through and evaluate, right?
Exactly. We just send them a link and then we take the top 2 and we quickly interview them. The interview really, we're going to ask them some questions. I really want first impression. Is this person someone that a patient would interact with and be like, oh, this is like, I feel comfortable with this person. And from there, you could take them into a long interview now. We hand them over to the client at that point. So, okay, now bring them into the office, go through a long interview, and then you make your hiring decision. And that will generally always yield a good employee. It doesn't guarantee it, but not doing that virtually guarantees a bad hire because you're not putting any thought into it. Well, if I have fewer resumes, let's go down to the hygienist. I have 1 resume. Well, I'd like to know what I'm dealing with, so I would still go through the process, but I'm probably going to hire that person. If they don't check all the boxes, I'm going to keep looking though, because I can't bleed. I still need a person, but I'm going to keep looking. Okay. Now, associate dentist is even more rigorous because this person is now going to be representing me and my brand in the practice. I would take them through a similar process. I don't do 1 score with associates because if they were smart enough to get through dental school, I'm not really worried about that. I want to know, is this person someone that my patients are going to accept? So I have them come in, spend a half a day following me so they can see what I do. And I'm actually not trying to teach them anything. I'm just trying to see how they interact. Can they have proper conversations with a patient present in the room? Can they introduce themselves, make eye contact, shake hands, whatever is you're looking for with that person? Can they ask appropriate questions with the patient there, not treating the patient like they don't exist? Do they have that self-awareness? That's what I'm looking for. Then I send them out with my team for the afternoon, take them for lunch, take them around town, show them town and see what's here. And you're really just looking for, is this a person you'd want to hang out with in the practice? That's my interview process.
Beer test. Can you or what was it called? Like if you're stuck at an airport with somebody, like would you have fun talking to that person, or would it be like a grueling experience?
Exactly. And that's how we do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, growing to, you tripled the size of the practice, obviously it's great to have like a good team, but how do you drive that many more patients, right? So you mentioned, there's some months you cracked over 200 new patients. I'm assuming, some things had to change for marketing. So what did you do? What did you do to get the phone to ring, to, get more people calling in? Was it just on referrals? Did you do any kind of like paid marketing? What did you find was a good investment to, basically drive more leads, more opportunities?
Yeah, so marketing is something that I actually have a real passion for. It was not one thing, as you well know, it was everything. And so from the patient experience, which is the foundation, from the first phone call, which is the foundation again, from every touch point in the practice, is the patient going to say, wow, or are they going to have an experience or a run-in with an employee that's going to be like, ooh, what happened? They must be having a bad day, or I don't know why that looks like that, or why is, the office looks nice, or they market so much, but then I go there and it's like kind of blah, or the paint is old and ratty and the carpet's frayed in the corner. You got to have all your internal pieces checked before you start actually going out to get patients. Because if you do, you're going to automatically be drawing patients by word of mouth, and your internal strategies will pull people in. Now you're going to cap that at a point though. Like for us internally, we were pulling 60 patients a month. That's about it with our referral process and all of those things. The rest was external. Now you turn on external once you get your internal stuff figured out, because if you don't have a good experience, you're only multiplying that by marketing is just a megaphone for what you already have. If your experience sucks, you're just going to tell the whole community now that your experience sucks, because people are going to come in now en masse and they're going to leave you bad reviews, and they're going to be, having undesirable, we'll say, conversations in the workplace about coming to your office and so forth. Get that all figured out.
This is something we deal with all the time is we try to focus first on the internal. Let's see what's going on, because most practices could probably double their patient flow without doing any extra marketing. I mean, everyone seems to assume that, we ask dentists, if we get 10 leads, 10 people call the practice inquiring about maybe booking an appointment, how many do you think your staff will book? And they'll all say, oh, all of them, right? Yeah. 9 out of 10 of them, right? And then when we start tracking this data for them, we listen to all their calls and we give them reports on, what the real numbers are. They're shocked when they see that maybe 1 in 3 book. And of course, the excuses come up, well, they're not good patients, right? It's like, well, define a good patient. Well, if they don't book with me, it means they're terrible people, right? It's like, no, they wanted dentistry, right? They weren't sure whether to come to you or the 20 other dentists in the area that also do Invisalign, right? So it's not that you're a bad dentist, he's a bad patient. We didn't do a good job of communicating the value that we offer.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
For a lot of dentists, when you try to focus on the internal and say, before you throw a bunch of money at this, it's good to get the internal elements working really well. How do we sound like when we're on the phone? Do we leave people with a great first impression? Do they feel like, wow, these people are really nice, they're super helpful, I just get a really good feeling about coming here. Is that all dialed in? And a lot of practices, they just want to start with the external stuff first. They want to throw money at Facebook, at SEO, at Google, or whatever. And they don't realize you're just multiplying all the problems.
Yeah. It's because it's easy. I can just give my credit card to a marketing company and they'll deal with it. But that's abdication. That's not delegation. It's a very big difference, right? If you just give it to someone and say, yeah, you figure it out, I don't want to know about it, then you're also beholden to whatever results they get or don't get. And understand that a marketing company cannot get you results if your internal processes suck. If you double the leads to a practice and they're only closing half the calls, well, yeah, I mean, you're spending half of your money in vain. You're just throwing it down the toilet. If you can get those things figured out, I mean, we do phone training, phone skills, basically your entry point closing training in 2 hours. And you could take someone from 50% close rate to 85% close rate. That is like a substantial bump in new patient flow, just there. So, I mean, we have the whole internal process dialed in. And we have a part of our program that's like, it's literally paint by numbers, marketing strategy. There's about 30, 40 strategies in there. If a typical GP practice starts at strategy 1 and the first several are all internal and they keep working through that, eventually they get to external, and then we just start turning the lights on some of the other strategies that are now externally facing. It's very, very difficult for a practice not to double, triple, et cetera, their new patient flow.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it a lot like, weight loss, fitness, people look in the mirror, they're not happy with what they see. Dentists look at their schedule, they're not happy with what they see. But the way you improve that isn't really complicated. Not that it's easy, right? But a lot of people are kind of searching for this external solution initially, right? It's like, I want a pill that I can swallow and then I can just keep doing what I'm doing already. And I'll just start, getting more and more fit, and, I'll have a beach body. And, like, does that work? No, not really. But you can make a lot of money selling that to people, right? There's a lot of companies out there who do. And when we try to help them understand, like, the difference between, your practice and a practice that's 2 or 3 times the size, it's because the practice is 3 times the size is just doing a lot of very little things better than you. It's not big strategies or big, marketing pushes that they've done. It's a lot of little, execution every day is a lot tighter. The way they answer the phone is just, it sounds nicer. They're more pleasant. They, ask a few more extra questions. They, they just go a little bit above and beyond, and that, accelerates, it ramps up, and it can create huge results, over the 6, 12, 18 months.
Yeah. And I can see why people, I mean, I've been there. I know exactly why the average dentist is going to say it's just easier for me to give my credit card to a company and have them deal with it, because all those little touch points that you mentioned, Nick, are critical, but they're painful to deal with, because now I have to take time. I have to teach my team. I don't know what to teach them. I don't have time to teach them. It's a pain for me to do it. I don't want to, take off clinic time when we need to produce. All of these things come up. But see, if you take a step back and you look again back at the big companies, the way that they run a leadership team. Well, you can build that within a dental practice. It's actually not that hard. Once you create a strategy for leadership within the practice, then all of your ideas, things you want to teach the team can actually run that playbook. You don't have to do it. Because if our coaching program relied on the dentist to do it, we would have 0 clients and 0 success. The whole thing runs through team.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of dentists feel like, as the business grows, it's just going to get harder, more stressful, more complicated. I mean, I've even heard from numerous clients, I would point out, things that larger practices were doing, share, here's how they approach it differently, look at their numbers, they're achieving better results. And on more than one occasion, I've had them say something along the lines of, yeah, but I don't want to get to that size. Like, that dentist is probably working crazy hours. They never get to see their kids. Their marriage is falling apart. Like, that's not worth it for me. I'm okay to remain down at this level. And given that we work with all of these clients, we talk to all of them. We see the numbers, and we also know the person running them. From my experience, usually when you have larger offices, they're larger not because the dentist works more or is putting more stress on their shoulders. It's the opposite. Everything just runs smoother. Their team is empowered to, make good decisions to grow the practice. Everything just runs like a well-oiled machine. It's these small practices that are struggling to break $1 million in production where, I mean, it's just chaos. You can film a reality TV show there. It's just absolute drama every single day. So, did you find that as you grew the practice, from 2.5 million to over 7 million, did your marriage fall apart? Did everything just just get worse? What was your experience with that?
Yeah, it's a really good point. So there's one of the first videos, Weekend Wisdoms, that we filmed, I don't know, 7-8 years ago, was called The 4 Stages of Scaling a Practice. It's still on YouTube. It's horrible lighting. It's terrible, but it's up there because it's our most popular video. We actually turned it into an article in the upcoming Elite Practice magazine. So many of you guys listening to this will see it. That is my experience in growing the practice. Okay. So the first stage, you want to blow your brains out with a small solo struggling practice. I call it under $1 million or around $1 million. And you're doing everything and you're killing yourself doing it. The next step, you're pushing harder, but you and a couple of core team members are now just running hard. You get to 2 million by doing that. When you want to crack 2 million and go beyond, now you have to be a leader and you have to engage your team. The team has to run it beyond that point because you can't. And so interestingly, what happens, to your point, Nick, when you get beyond that level, now you actually have the ability and the freedom to run your practice with systems and through people versus everything on your shoulders, which is honestly, it's the worst place to be as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. As we grew, I would take a day off and just compress the week. I got to the point where I was doing 5 days of dentistry in 2 or 3, same production, just half the week. And we were making way more in terms of profit. Now, I'll tell you, that's not just me, because we have clients who will tell you that. You'll look at some of the testimonials that we have online and you'll see people saying that I'm working less, I'm making more. It's all about systems and running through team. If you have a team-driven practice, your marriage is not falling apart. In fact, you actually have time to take the day off or flexibility. Hey, I need next Wednesday afternoon off. I need to have some buffer time in my schedule. I want to work less and I want to make what I'm making today. That is possible, but it has to be done through other hands, not yours. And you can only do that by scaling up. So that is actually, if you want to have a less stressful, less busy ownership experience, scale is the way to do it. Now, do you do that by having multiple practices? Often not. That's a different animal, but you can still do it. Just the complexity of the system is a little bit greater. But having larger practices, you look at practices that are 8, 9, 10 chairs, the owner, if they've got that system figured out, if they've got a team-driven practice truly installed in their operation, they're working less than the person who's doing $1 million a year.
Yeah. So when it comes to systems and processes, I mean, I've always been shocked when, I would talk to dentists and, at RevUp, we have, a stand-up meeting where we just check in very quickly, 5 minutes. What's everyone working on? What did we do yesterday? What are we doing today? We would have, weekly meetings to talk about operational issues, how to improve things. And I was always really shocked when I would talk to dentists and I would ask them, just bring this up during your stand-up. It's like, what is that? It's like, but don't you have a meeting every day? Like, no. And sometimes they would leave the office without the staff even knowing. Like there's no team meeting. There's no discussion of, how do, like, where are we seeing bottlenecks? How do we improve things? They would just look at me like deer in headlights, right? So, what are some systems and processes that, dental offices really need to consider putting in? Like just basic things that could really start to improve things for you. Give us some ideas of like what's missing that could really take them to the next level that they really should consider.
Well, you mentioned meetings. I mean, meetings are huge. So your morning huddle, one of the first things we do is we transform a morning huddle for an office. If they're doing one right now, what they're doing is, here's the schedule, and Mrs. Jones is in at 2:00 and has a toothache and hasn't paid her bill, and all, here's where we can put emergency patients, and it's just this blah, blah, blah of the schedule. The morning huddle that we teach is very simply, I go in as the leader of the team. My job in 5 minutes or less is to get everyone smiling and laughing. If I can get them excited and inspired for the day, the rest of that stuff works itself out. Nobody actually cares when Mrs. Jones is coming in and if she has a toothache. We're going to fix that because that's what we do. We care about people. But see, I have to get people to, in 5, maximum 10 minutes, from all the stuff that they came into the office with, all of the issues at home and the drive in and the person that cut them off and all that garbage. And I'm going to get that and get it out. And I got to put in their heads, we love patients and we're going here to serve today. And we have awesome jobs and we're excited to do what we do. If I can get that transition to happen in the shortest time possible, then I have succeeded in my morning huddle. The rest of it now, really quickly, you can have a 2-minute stand up with your assistant and just run through the day. Okay, what do we see? Probably going to have a little bit of a hiccup here or here. Just be prepared for this or this. Awesome, let's go. That's your morning huddle. See, it's all about energy and rewiring the brains of your people, not about looking for all the problems in the day. Because if you start your day like that, it's going to be such a fun day, I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Then you got to have some time with team. And people in our programs will spend an hour a week going through our content in a very strategic way. If you don't do that, very simply, you have a monthly meeting. You must have a monthly meeting. If you don't have at least a monthly meeting, my goodness, what are you doing? 2 or 3 hours, we would book 3 hours. Our whole team, by the way, which was like 45 people, when you shut that thing down for 3 hours, boy, it's expensive. And you pay everybody to be there. But when you sharpen the axe, watch out for the next 2 or 3 weeks, because it's just like, they just are ready to go. It's like they're caged animals. You let them out and off they go and they just do what they do. You get them excited about, again, here's why we do what we do. I would spend the first half an hour of every team meeting, all team meeting, talking about here's what we've done for the community. Here's what, the things that you guys have done, wow stories, shout outs and so forth, awards, all these things, again, get people excited. Then you do some training, you calibrate, and you have a meal and you let everyone go. Like, you got to spend that time. Our saying is the more you meet, the more you make, basically, because if you don't spend some time gelling as a group, really quickly, look at the 5 dysfunctions of a team, Pat Lencioni's book, right? First pillar,
books, yeah.
It's foundational in what we teach, right? First pillar, trust. How do you build trust if you don't spend time with people? How do you build trust if you know nothing about them? If I don't even know that my assistant has children, let alone what their names are, how much trust do I have with them?
Absolutely.
Right? Like, just little things, right? And again, this is a process. It takes, our program is 3 years for a reason, but this is why at the end of that time, you have practices that have doubled and tripled. Because when you install those pieces, piece by piece, it's just one thing on top of another. Oh boy. I mean, it's super powerful, but you have to spend that time. So meetings are a huge, huge one. The other thing is a structure. Like, a leadership team is not that complicated to build, right? You have your key people in the office. If you give them guidelines, guardrails, and you teach them how to lead, how to manage their respective areas, how to communicate information and communicate it back to the leadership team, you can actually implement anything you want in very short order through those people without having to get the entire team always together to do anything. So again, there's just so many pieces to getting a leadership structure in place in the practice. But if you do it, this is the difference between the typical dental practice or typical small business and the next level.
So, tell me more about eventually you decided to sell the practice and move into, you started Elite Practice. What made was coaching something you were passionate about always, or did it something that, once you were able to implement this in your practice, you wanted to help other dentists? Because some dentists would think, why not just keep going, open another practice, grow that one and just build an empire, right? But ultimately you decided to, step back and build Elite Practice. Tell me when it went into that decision. Why did you decide to sell? Why did you decide to go more into helping other dentists?
Good question. So we started Elite Practice alongside our practice. Elite Practice has been going for 10 years now. And the reason it originally was put together was never actually to have a group of clients that we teach. It was actually for our own practice to continue to grow, to scale, to take the model and take it elsewhere. Turns out that now we're actually doing that, but maybe we'll touch on that after. The Elite Practice model was built for our own people because we had, like I said, 45 team members. There was always people coming and going, mat leaves, etc. We needed so many team members. We were actually bringing people in from Toronto. If you know where Sault Ste. Marie is, that's not a small distance.
Quite a drive.
We were literally moving new grad hygienists from schools, bringing them literally like paying to move them to Sault Ste. Marie to work in our practice because we had 7 full-time hygiene on the floor at any given day. We just needed to have those people there. And if you burned a hygiene day because someone was sick, it was like, where are we going to put them? So even with 17 chairs, we were still at that place. So we were pushing really hard to kind of gobble up as many people as we could. And that it requires, like I said, an intentional onboarding process. If you don't have that, you're going to bring people in and churn them very quickly because they'll be like, I don't know what's going on. It's too fast. I don't understand. Like, you guys are too demanding. But that's not the case. It was so different than the typical practice where they would show up and kind of do whatever they wanted, whatever they thought was right. And so if you have 10 people in a practice, everyone doing what they think is right, then no one has any idea what the other person's doing. Yeah, so you have a clear accountability structure. Everyone knows exactly how far I carry the baton before I pass it to the next person. And when you build this process, it becomes really easy, actually, to scale and to grow. And so we have this onboarding process. We bring people in, and then at the end of it all, they settle into the roles very quickly, and they are now ready to go. And so that's kind of the way that we envision Elite Practice. So we can take people through this training process, and they would be ready to go in our practice. Then it's like, well, we're what we've been through, and this has become replicable. I wonder. And so the first couple of clients were like, yeah, this is what we're doing. If you want to know more about it, well, we can give you access to see what you think. And then they would try it and be like, this is phenomenal. Can I pay for it? Eventually it became, well, you know what, we can actually use this because now we've got it to a point where literally any business, any practice can use what we teach. And that is why we are now, where we are as, I think, Canada's largest provider of training to dentists. But beyond that, does it work in multiple practices? Well, we're at the point right now with a dental partnership organization where we're doing exactly that. So we're now taking our model into that foray where it's now many practices and so forth. So we've kind of come full circle. I originally envisioned, buying other practices in our area, but then we became so big that we were gobbling up patients from 4 or 5 hours drive north around us. I mean, south was Michigan, so we didn't really grab too many from the States. But there was like, if I bought another practice or built another practice anywhere in that radius, I'm only competing with myself. So it made no sense to do it. So for us, okay, well, this is as big as we can get. What's next? I'm a person who's big on the next. So I'm like, okay, well, this is my number if I can get it. And I got it actually very quickly and unexpectedly. So I said, you know what? Hey, that's great. Let's flip the practice. Let's go full into this. Let's teach dentists how to get off this treadmill of trading time for money. And we'll see where it goes. And well, it went.
So where's the company now in the sense of what kind of dentists do you work with? Are you specializing only working with Canadian dentists? Do you work with US dentists? Is there a certain size of dental practice where it makes sense to, kind of like implement these programs? You mentioned you're working with, a dental partner organization or, DSO. Are you moving more to the corporate dental space? Kind of like what sets a lead practice apart? Because, if you want a consulting company, there's lots to pick from. I think what has attracted me to you guys for a long time is it was run by a dentist, right? So you actually know what it's like to be in the operatory, to see patients and try to implement all of these things. And once it could be a lot to juggle. So I have a lot of respect for people who, have talked the talk, but also walk the walk. So how has it changed over the years? Like, where's the lead practice now?
Yeah, it's a good point. The thing that makes it easy for us to relate and to teach other teams is that we've done it. I mean, there's nothing that, like, no one ever shows up with a canned, cloned PowerPoint presentation and says, here's how you do it. And if there's any depth to any questions they get, well, I don't know. This is how we teach it. No, we've done everything literally and broken it and fixed it and broken it twice and fixed it and so forth. And our team also has that depth. Like, our lead program advisor has been with us 20 years and our project manager has been with us 10 plus years. And so we have in our leadership people that really know dentistry inside out and backwards, because they've been in my practice and been part of the growth all this time, so that our new people that come in on our team have that depth to draw on. But in terms of where is the company today, so I mean, we are working with practices across Canada, also in the US. So we have a growing presence in the US. Everything that we teach is 100% exportable. There's really no difference between Canadian and US practice.
US and Canada. People look for the same things in a dentist. The same core fundamentals of running a practice apply here and there. Insurance is a little bit different, but ideally, like, you run a practice where it isn't super insurance dependent, right? And I think a lot of the same strategies that can help, a US practice become more fee for service also applies to Canada as well.
Yeah, exactly. There's really no difference in how you approach customer service, how you approach marketing, and how you approach systems or training of team, leadership. It's all the same. Whether you take credit card payments or you take insurance assignment payments, it really doesn't matter. Because if you're doing these things right, you'll be successful. That's basically the bottom line. I mean, our ideal practice is, anything where, let me put it to you this way, the size of practice is completely irrelevant. And the desire of a business owner to grow to a certain point or not is also irrelevant. If a practice comes to us and says, yeah, I only have 3 chairs and I don't want to get to 30 chairs. I just want to have 3 chairs. I just want to stop having this stressful experience of ownership. That's fine. The key is that the person that comes to us has a mindset that they want to grow. Mm-hmm. If they come to us with the mindset of, I want you to fix it, I can't fix you. I mean, you have to want to change.
It's right? Like they're looking for Mary Poppins to come flying down on an umbrella and sing a song, and all those pesky staff members start getting their act together, and it's like, that's just not how it works.
Yeah, it's a journey to grow as a person and as a leader, and if a person will do that and take their leadership team with them and take their family, their spouse with them, they will change their practice and their life. And this is where you see the testimonials that we have on the website, where people will tell you, I'm a better husband, father, and so forth. This is my experience in growth. I mean, this is what I said. And now that we can see other people saying that, it's like, that is what drives our team to do what we do. Because I know personally where I was, right before the accident that I had, my daughter hadn't been born. I hadn't done a lot of things that, I probably should have had my act together and done at that point. Shortly following that, I'm like, I'm not burning the opportunities that I get now, because this is a second chance that there's no good reason for me to have it. It's just, by the grace of God. So I have this, I'm not going to blow it. And so, for people that come to us they're engaged, if they're willing to engage, they will be successful. That's just, our pattern is very, very simple. If you ask anyone on our team, they'll tell you the doctors that we work with that never have calls, never engage with us, don't respond to our messages, why'd you sign up? Exactly. Right? We have those once in a while, right? But the people, like the vast majority of our clients, and I'm sure you have the exact same experience, Nick, the people that are engaged, that take the calls, that produce the numbers, that will think through the process and actually like engage with what you're dealing with, what you're teaching them, they get the results. It just, how could you not, right?
So how can people get in touch with you? How can they learn more? You mentioned that, generally the program is a number of years, right? And we tell people as well, it's like, you're not going to find some sort of marketing solution, consulting solution where in a few weeks, magically everything's going to start to change, right? So it's an ongoing process. So how can people learn more, kind of like what's involved, what you guys do, maybe have a chat with you directly? What's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, just request an information kit. You can do that on our website. That's the easiest. Our website is very simply theelitepractice.com. You can request an info kit there. You can book a call with one of our team members, walk you through, where you are right now and where you want to go, see if what we do is a fit.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was very informative. And thank you for all of our listeners. And check it out, theelitepractice.com. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick.
Are you struggling to grow your dental practice? Do you look at your schedule and see that it's constantly filled with holes? Are you tired of investing months and thousands of dollars on marketing and consultants only to see little to no return? Discover a smarter way to grow your practice with RevUp Dental's AI-powered software. At RevUp Dental, we analyze hundreds of dental practices across North America and hundreds of thousands of new patient calls and interactions in order to help dentists better understand what's really holding their practice back from growth and what they can do about it. From reviewing how your staff handle new patient calls and coaching them on how to secure more appointments, all the way to analyzing your practice's reputation online and helping you become the top choice for patients in your area. With RevUp Dental, you'll receive a clear roadmap and support for how to take your practice to the next level. Think of it like Google Maps or Waze. You plug in where you want to go, we find the fastest and most efficient route, and we give you step-by-step guidance and support on how to get there. See what other dentists are saying and book a demo at RevUpDental.com.